Hi, it's Dawn from Ninja Bunny Crochet. Today I have for us to do this cute little poncho that I have sitting right here next to me. I call it my Summer Days Poncho. It's done with the corner stitch and it's made in 2 panels. Each panel is 24 by 35 inches, and then they're sewn together to make the poncho. So we're going to turn the camera around and we're going to make this cute little Summer Days Poncho. The yarn I used is Lion Brand Comfy Cotton Blend. This is a lightweight 3 yarn. It is machine washable and dryable. It comes in a 7-ounce cake, 200 grams, 392 yards, or 358 meters. You will need 3 of these cakes to make 1 poncho. This color that I'm using today is called Silver Lining. The color in the thumbnail is called Whipped Cream. You also need a J 6.0 millimeter hook. Today I'll be using my Clover Amore hook. You're going to want a tape measure, a pair of scissors, a yarn needle to weave in your ends, and you're going to want a couple of stitch markers. Now you don't need to use these fancy locking stitch markers, but you can use a different color piece of yarn or a paper clip or whatever you use for your stitch markers. Once you have all of your supplies, let's get started. Before I jump into today's tutorial, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that little icon right down there in the corner. That'll automatically subscribe you to my channel. And while you're down there, don't forget to ring that bell. That will notify you whenever I upload a new video. And if you like content like this, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. That lets YouTube know that you like my videos. It also helps me gauge what type of videos that you would like to see on my channel. So to start the Summer Days Poncho, we're going to start with a slip knot on our hook and a chain of 6. So we're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we have our chain of 6. We are going to start 4th chain from hook. The loop on our hook does not count as a stitch. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4 with a double crochet. The skipped chains are going to count as our first stitch, and we're going to be using this chain space right here. So we're going to go in the next chain and make a double crochet, and in the last chain and make a double crochet. This is our first block. To start row 2, we're going to chain up 6 again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Again, 4th chain from hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to start with a double crochet, and we're going to make another block. So 1, and the next chain, a double crochet, and in the next chain, a double crochet. Then we're going to take this first block and we're going to flip it up so that chain is facing up. We're going to slip stitch into that chain space to connect the blocks. Now our 2 blocks are connected, and we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. That counts as our first double crochet, and we're going to double crochet 3 more times into the chain space. 1, 2, 3, and that is row 2. So we have 2 blocks, 1, 2, and we're working from corner to corner. So this is the actual corner to corner stitch. We're going to start up row 3 with a chain 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Again, 4th chain from hook. The one on our loop does the loop on our hook does not count as a stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4 with a double crochet. And double crochet into the next 2 chains. Now we're going to take our blocks and flip them upright so that the chain spaces are facing up. I'm going to slip stitch into that first chain space to connect the first block and our second block. So we're going to chain 3, and we're going to put 3 more double crochets into that space. 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to go to the next block and connect it by slip stitching into that chain space. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and 3 double crochets, all into the chain space. 1, 2, and 3. Let's do that last double crochet again. There we go. And now we have our 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3. And how we count, we can count 2 different ways. We can either count the rows by going across the corners by going 1, 2, 3, or you can count your blocks going up the edge. 1, 2, 3. Either way works at this point. Once we start decreasing, we'll count our rows along the sides. So to start row 4, we're going to chain up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4th chain from hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to double crochet. 1, 2. Oh, we got a knot there. There we go. And 3. Again, you're going to take your blocks and flip them up so that they're all pointing upright with your chain spaces, and slip stitch into that chain space, chain 3, and 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Go to the next chain space and slip stitch. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and 3 double crochets into that chain space. Go to the next chain space and repeat that. And that puts us at the end of row 4. Again, 2 ways you can count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can go up the sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're going to continue working your rows back and forth till you have 28 blocks. So either 28, you're going to either count them this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, or up the sides, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also go up this side, 1, 2, 3, 4. So once you have 28 blocks, come on back and we're going to start decreasing on one side and we're going to keep going increasing on the other side so that we form a rectangle shape panel. I'm at the end of row 28. We have 28 blocks. Your piece should measure in the length, not across the tops of your blocks, but down the length on the sides. It should measure approximately 24 inches. If your piece doesn't measure 24 inches, if it's a little bit shorter, you might want to add an extra row or two just to make sure you have the right length. If your piece is measuring longer than 24 inches, you may want to frog back a row or so that your piece measures 24 inches, or your poncho might be a little bit bigger. It's really up to you on that. If you add a couple of rows or you take a couple rows off, make sure you write down that number, because when you make your second panel, you want to make sure that your second panel is the exact same size as your first panel is. So now that we're at row 28, for row 29, we're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn the work over. So just flip it over. And in these first 3 stitches, you're going to slip stitch in there. So you're going to go 1, 2, and 3. Because we're not going to be adding another block. We're going to be going straight up. And then slip stitch into that chain space. And then we're going to start our first block right here. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and put our double crochets right into this block. 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to put our next slip stitch into this next chain space here to connect these blocks. Just like that. And see how the side, this is going to be going straight up. I'm going to chain up 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to work just like we were prior. We're going to be working our 3 double crochets. So we're only going to be decreasing on one side. So just on one side we'll be doing this. On the opposite side we're going to be working the same as we were when we were increasing on both sides. So I will meet back up with you at the end of this row. We're at the end of row 29. And we're at our last block, so we're going to go ahead and slip stitch into that chain space, chain up 3, and put our 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to end the row just like we would normally end, and we're going to start on this end just like we were starting our first 28 rows. We're still going to have 28 blocks. We're not going to be increasing a block every row. So we're going to go ahead and chain up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to start in that 4th chain. 1, 2, 3, 4. We got to turn our work and flip up the blocks. And we're going to slip stitch into that next chain space, just like we were working the previous rows. And we're going to work our way back down the row. The difference is going to be how we end this row, because we slip stitched that first block on row 29. So this is row 30. So we're just going to continue working like we normally were until we get to the end of the row. So I will meet back up with you at the end of the row to show you how to end the row and also how to start the row again for row 31. We're at the end of row 30. We're going to slip stitch into that last, well, second to last chain space. We're going to chain up 3. We're going to make our last block. So 1, 2, 3. So that's our last block of the row. And here's where we slip stitched on that previous row. So we have our chain space. We slip stitched here, and here's our chain space. So we're going to slip stitch into that chain space to finish off the row. We're not going to do a chain 3 and form another block. We're going to stop right there. We're at the end of the row. To start row 31, you chain 1, turn the work, so turn the work over, and we're going to slip stitch into the first three stitches, first 3 double crochets, and then into the next chain space. And now we're going to form our first block. So chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and do your first 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And we have our blocks are right there. They should be facing up. And you can slip stitch right into the next block. We have our edge that's going to be going straight. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put a stitch marker here so I can try to give you a little bit better view of what your side should be looking like. And here's your bottom corner where you're going to be going. This is going to remain straight and it's going to go up to create the rectangle. And then this side over here should continue going straight up. So remember, we're working corner to corner. When you're counting your rows at this point, this count in the center here will remain 28 blocks. So to know how many rows that you've done, this is your straight corner that goes up. Go all the way over to this corner and count your blocks going this way up to the furthest corner. So up to this corner. So at this point, you should have 30 blocks going this up this side. So that would be that you have 30 rows completed. You're going to continue doing the slip stitches on this side and then start your block, so that you do slip stitches and then start your block here, so that you do the slip stitches and then start your block so that you have a straight edge. And on this side, you're going to start like you were continuing before with the chain of 6 and then starting a new block, so that this side continues going up. And you're going to do that till this side here has 40 blocks. Once you get to that point, come on back and we're going to start doing the decrease on both sides till you get back to the opposite corner. So it'll be coming down like this to this corner, and you'll have a nice rectangle, and your rectangle should measure 24 inches across this way and 35 inches on the height. So remember, you're going to create a length on the long side of 40 blocks. Once you get to that, come on back and then we'll start working to bring it up to the opposite corner. Okay, we're at the end of row 40. We've made our last block and we're going to go ahead and slip stitch to that first block from the previous row. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the slip stitches on both sides. So since we have slip stitches here, this row is going to start with slip stitches, and when we end on the last row, we are also going to start with a slip stitch across the block. So for row 41, we're going to only chain 1 and turn the work and slip stitch in those first 3 stitches, and into the next chain space, and that's where we start our block. So chain up 3 and 3 double crochets into that same chain space. This is nothing different than you've already been doing. Slip stitch into the next chain space and chain up 3 and start your next block, which is 3 double crochets into that chain space. You're going to continue working the same pattern that you have been working all the way across to the end of the row, and I will meet back up with you at the end of the row. We're at the end of row 41. Now this row is basically the same as your previous row. We still have the 28 blocks that go across the center of your panel. So when your blocks are pointing up, these are still 28. Down the edge, you're going to have 41 blocks. The difference is going to now happen from row 41 on to the end of the panel. Instead of chaining 6, you're going to chain 1 and turn the work, just like you did on your on row 41. We're going to slip stitch into the first 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3, and now into that chain space. And now we're going to start our first block. So chain up 3, and then we're going to go into the block, or into the chain space, and do our 3 double crochets. And then go to our next block, and we're going to continue our pattern just like before. So what we're doing now is each row that we add, we're going down a block. So we're decreasing now. Instead of remaining the same count, we're going to be decreasing. So our panel is going to now be going straight up the sides, and it's going to be going towards the corner. So now we're working the corner to corner now, but we're doing it in the rectangle shape. So you're going to continue decreasing on both sides now. So both sides on both ends, when you start your first block, you're going to be doing the slip stitches so that you have that straight edge on both sides, on both ends of the row. So let me get to the other side here. Let me just back out the camera a little bit. So here's the row that we were adding the blocks to, and now we're going to start going straight up. And our other side, where we were going straight up, has already got a significant edge to it already. So now both sides are going to go straight up, and the number of blocks here are going to decrease, so it's going to go up and it's going to work towards the corner. So continue working till you have 1 block left. So it'll be like going back towards the beginning. So you're going to have 1 block left, and I'll meet back up with you when you have 1 block left. I'm down to my last block. I've slip stitched into that last chain space. I'm going to go ahead and chain up 3 and put my 3 double crochets into that chain space to finish the last block. And we're going to slip stitch into the very last chain space, and now go ahead and fasten off. You don't need to leave a really long tail, you just need to leave enough of a tail that you can weave it in. Grab up our scissors and snip off our yarn. Okay, so let me pull everything back here so we can see our completed panel. Okay, so bring up my camera here so we can see as much as this panel that we can fit in to the camera. So we have a nice rectangle panel, and it's going to be hard to fit the whole thing into the camera because it's pretty large. But I have this nice rectangle shaped panel. I can put the edge in here so you can see that. It's going to measure 35 inches along the long side, and then we are measuring, let me pull up my picture here, 24 inches on the short side. So what you'll need to do now is you're going to need to go ahead and back up the video and make a second panel just like the first one. Once you have 2 completed panels, come on back and I'll show you how we're going to sew the panels together and do the edging if you would like to put an edging on your poncho. Once you have both of your panels completed, you're going to be assembling them in this manner. You're going to place your panels together like this, and the first seam you're going to make is along the blue line here. So you're going to have to sew panel 1 and 2 together along this line right here. Then you'll be sewing A to B and B to A. So you're going to do AB, BA. And I have a series of pictures that I will insert in with the written directions on that once I show how to do how I do my seam. So that hopefully that'll help make this a little bit more clear for you on how to assemble your poncho. So let me just get my yarn needle and some yarn, and we'll drop the camera down and I'll show you how I do my seam. Thread up your yarn needle, and what I like to do is take a slip knot and put it on the other end of my needle. We're going to start at the neckline and take our first stitch marker out there, and we have it lined up. Now you can start at the bottom or the top. I'm going to start at the neckline just because it's right here. You might want to start at the bottom just to make sure everything is lined up. That's really up to you. If you're confident that you have placed your stitch markers in the right spot, then you can go ahead and start at the neckline. Now once your slip knot reaches the top like this, just go ahead and put your needle through there and tighten it down. And you have your yarn is secure. You can weave this tail in afterwards. Now I am going to just do a whip stitch to seam my two pieces together here. Now the important thing is you want to try to make sure you're lining up the blocks. So we have one block here and one block here, and you want to just make sure the blocks line up together, because that'll make your poncho look so much nicer if you make sure your blocks line up. Now you could use a mattress stitch if you would like. It's really up to you. But I think the whip stitch works perfectly fine for this. Again, it's your preference, but the biggest thing is just to make sure that your blocks are lining up. Once you have your poncho all sewn together, both your seams, because you're going to have two seams, come on back and I will show you the optional border that you can put on this. You don't have to put the border on. You can if you'd like to. My poncho, the first poncho I made that was in the thumbnail, did not have the border on it, but I'm going to put a border on this one just so that I can show you that you can put a nice little border on it if you'd like. So now my poncho is all sewn together. We're going to work on a border. Now you don't have to put the border on. This is if you want to put the border on. Your poncho can be completely done just as it is. So I'm going to work a border around the neck opening and at the bottom of the poncho around the bottom edge. So I'm going to start at the bottom edge. I'm going to bring the camera down and show you how to work the border on the bottom edge, and it'll be exactly the same around the neck as well. Okay, to put a border around your poncho, you're going to start on the bottom. I like to start near the point but not at the point. So I'm going to start a few blocks down, and you're going to do a slip stitch to attach your yarn in between two of the blocks. Let's get that tail out of the way there. And in our first block here we have 3 double crochets, and we're looking at the bottom of the 3 double crochets. So we're going to go to that second one right here, and we're going to work 3 half double crochets. 1, 2, and 3 right in the center of that block. Just like that. And then in the next, we're going to slip stitch in between the 2 blocks, and then around this double crochet on this sideways block, 3 double crochets. I mean 3 half double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Again, slip stitch in between the 2 blocks. And in the next block we have an upside down one, so we're going to go ahead and go to that center double crochet and do 3 half double crochets. And slip stitch in between the 2 blocks. And then we have a half block, not a half block, a sideways block. And we're going to go around that double crochet with 3 half double crochets. And again, in between the blocks, slip stitch. And now we're at the end block, and go to that second double crochet with 3 half double crochets. And we're going to go to this, to that next space in between the 2 blocks and slip stitch. And then we got to kind of turn the work a little bit here to get to the next block. And that's how you turn the corner. And you're going to put 3 half double crochets. And slip stitch. And you're going to do that all the way around your poncho. And you're also going to do that around your neck hole as well for your border. And once you have that, you just slip stitch into that very first slip stitch that you made and fasten off. And then you'll go up to, and we'll do the neck. And I'll start you off on the neck hole as well. So once you get this completely done, come on back and we'll start the neck hole. Once you have the bottom edge done, then we're going to do the same stitch, the shell stitch and the slip stitches up along the top edge of the poncho. I would start, with your first of all, make sure you have your right side facing. I would start like up towards the corner, so it would be more like your join would be up towards your shoulder. And start with a slip stitch. And same thing, we're going to go into the center stitch. And do 3 half double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Slip stitch in between the blocks. And 3 half double crochets around that next stitch, that sideways block. And slip stitch in between. And again, into that center double crochet. So you have your, oh, that one's not quite, that's not the center one. That looks like more like the first one. Oh, that's the center one. One, two, and three. And you're going to slip stitch in between. And then we have a sideways block. We're going to go around. It doesn't matter whether you do around that's on that sideways block, around that end stitch, or through the stitch, as long as you're consistent throughout the border. So once you finish this up, we'll be all done with the poncho. So I'll meet back up with you once I finish the neck. So here's my completed poncho, as much as I can fit under the camera, because I can't fit the whole thing under the camera. It's kind of slipping here off the table. So thanks for watching, and happy crocheting! Bye-bye!